In a prison, there's a man who was sentenced to 8 years named Song Woo-cheol. That day, he was visited by a woman with her son. The mother asked Woo-cheol to show his face so that her son could see his face. It turned out that in the past, Woo-cheol accidentally beat his opponent in a boxing match until he died, and the victim was this boy's older brother. After a long time passed, Woo-cheol was finally released from prison. He was greeted by his 2 friends, Jang Do-shik and Park Han-tae. They were happy to see that Woo-cheol could get out early because of his good behavior. Then, they were shocked when Woo-cheol didn't want to be offered cigarettes anymore. Then, Do-shik introduced his subordinate, Kang Yoon-jae. Yoon-jae had worked with Do-shik for several years. After that, they continued their trip with Do-shik's car. At that time, Do-shik offered Woo-cheol a job at his bar, but Woo-cheol refused. Now, he just wanted to live in peace. They then ate at a stall on the beach. Do-shik was Woo-cheol's friend when they were young. They both used to dream of becoming rich. However, only Do-shik was the one who made that dream come true. He became a successful businessman, although most of his business is an illegal business. After that, Do-shik got a call from his subordinate. Therefore, he asked Han-tae to accompany Woo-cheol because he had a sudden problem. Do-shik has prepared a surprise for Woo-cheol, his best friend. After that, Woo-cheol and Han-tae got drunk until the night. Han-tae took Woo-cheol to his hotel, and Han-tae left. But before that, Han-tae mentioned the room number and password. At the room, Woo-cheol was greeted by someone. The girl immediately grabbed Woo-cheol and introduced herself. Her name is Byam. She then pulled Woo-cheol onto the bed. Woo-cheol refused it, but Byam still forced him. Woo-cheol saw that this girl's hands had scratches, so it is clear that this girl used drugs. Because of that, the girl looked annoyed, and she was going to take a shower first. After taking a bath, Byam realized that Woo-cheol didn't want to spend the night with her. She was just going to leave, but her boss, Madame Han, called her. Madame Han said that someone named Jong-gon was looking for her. Therefore, Byam's boss told her not to come home tonight. Byam ended up sleeping in that hotel room. Byam slept on the bed, while Woo-cheol slept on the sofa. That night, Woo-cheol had a hard time sleeping. Dark memories of the past disturbed his sleep. On the other hand, it turned out that Do-shik had several bars and karaoke. In one of his bars, one of the hostesses was injured and beaten very badly by someone. Luckily, the girl was still alive. Do-shik then met a man who was sleeping in the hotel room, and this person was named Jo Jong-gon, a corrupt police officer, and he has business relations with Do-shik. Actually, Do-shik was very annoyed with this addict guy, but he is a distributor who connects Do-shik with a big supplier of drug sales. This made Jong-gon act arbitrarily and cause trouble in Do-shik's business place. Do-shik's bodyguard, Yoon-jae, was almost angry when he saw his boss being slapped. If Do-shik hadn't held him, maybe Yoon-jae would have finished off this corrupt cop. In fact, Jong-gon was getting more and more wild. Yoon-jae was forced to hold back his emotions. In another place, a ship was on the high seas, picking up goods in the middle of the sea. This man is Ri Gak-soo. He was the biggest drug supplier for Jang Do-shik's business. Meanwhile, that morning, Byam left a message in the hotel room because she left first. But strangely, this girl wrote down her phone number. Now, Woo-cheol intended to survive and leave this city. He went to a job agency to look for work on a ship, and if it's possible, he wanted to stay for a long time at sea. The officer said there was a crab fishing boat that would leave in 3 days, and Woo-cheol needed to stay for 2 months in the sea. Later, night came. Strangely enough, Woo-cheol couldn't forget Byam's face. After hesitating, he called the girl. After that, they met at a cafe. Woo-cheol was curious who forced her, and why didn't she report to the police? However, Byam instead laughed, because she couldn't do that. This poor girl admitted that she had been trapped in an illegal thing, and it was the man who gave it to her. Byam voluntarily let herself be hurt. After that, they walked together. Woo-cheol took Byam home. Here, Byam saw Woo-cheol's hands' movements, so she realized that this man was a boxer. Byam then said that she used to be close to a boxer, and according to her, their habits were the same. At the intersection, Byam said goodbye and wanted to go. But before leaving, Byam teased Wuchiol, asking him if he wanted to be alone with her tonight. Hearing that, Wuchiol was immediately nervous. He thanked Byam for accompanying him for a drink, but Byam kissed him instead. Then, Wuchiol went to Du Shik's place. They talked about the past, about a man named Kim Jak-won. The scene showing an underground illegal boxing fighting arena where two people were fighting in the ring. It was Wuchiol against Jae-won. The punch fight was very exciting, and at the end of the round, Jae-won cheated, making Wuchiol angry and hit this guy even though the bell was ringing. The audience was angry at Wuchiol because he cheated. This place was actually an arena for boxing illegal gambling. Jang Du-shik was the manager. All the spectators who were annoyed with Wuchiol placed a bet on Jae-won, and Du-shik gave a code. Actually, today's match has been arranged because Jae-won was favored to win and Wuchiol has to pretend to be pushed in the first round. In the second round, he has to win this match. Du-shik stood up, indicating the betting time was about to run out. All the gamblers raised their bets. They raised their bets for Jae-won. After that, the second round started, but Wuchiol was pushed. Suddenly, Jae-won felt dizzy. Wuchiol used this opportunity to beat Jae-won. That day, Wuchiol won the match. Meanwhile, Jae-won fell down in the ring. The referee checked Jae-won's condition. He collapsed and he couldn't breathe anymore. Because of this, Wuchiol was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Back to the present time, Wuchiol went to the crematorium. He expressed his condolences for the death of his opponent. Jae-won's mother was depressed over the death of her son. At that time, Wuchiol was very shocked because it turned out that Jae-won was Byam's boyfriend. This feeling of guilt haunted Wuchiol more and more. It's no longer strange if Byam recognizes his habits. That night, Wuchiol was drunk again. Suddenly, he received a call from Byam. On the call, she was screaming in pain. Hearing that, Wuchiol immediately ran and saw Byam being dragged by someone. Wuchiol followed her. It turned out that it was Jong-gun who forced her and harassed her. Wuchiol wanted to beat up the man, but he remembered Du-shik's words to not cause trouble. After waiting for some time, Wuchiol followed Jong-gun. Of course, Jong-gun started to realize that he was being followed. In a dark alley, Jong-gun threatened Wuchiol, and they ended up getting into fistfights. But for Wuchiol, who was a boxer, this person was not a difficult opponent. Jong-gun was battered. Wuchiol then threatened him that if he touched Byam again, Wuchiol was going to finish him off. But when Wuchiol checked Jong-gun's identity card, it turned out that he was a police officer. So now, Jong-gun was threatening Wuchiol back. Meanwhile, in a very quiet harbor, a ship was docked. Du-shik and his gang were waiting for a drug delivery package from Gak-soo. It turned out that Jong-gun was the middleman for all these goods. Gak-soo refused to do the buying and selling if Jong-gun wasn't here. Du-shik tried to give an excuse and tried to contact Jong-gun, but he didn't answer. Gak-soo then postponed the transaction and asked his men to come back to the sea. Du-shik then got a call from Wuchiol. Here, Wuchiol told Du-shik if he had a problem with a police officer. Du-shik was shocked, especially since Wuchiol was involved in a problem with Jong-gun. Du-shik was annoyed and said that Wuchiol shouldn't have helped the woman. And why should Wuchiol believe in Byam? She's just an addict. In the end, Du-shik was willing to help Wuchiol as long as he worked for him. Du-shik needed someone to run his business, so Wuchiol would be placed in a bar. Having no other choice, Wuchiol was forced to agree, and he would do anything. Wuchiol never thought he would return to this gangster world that he hates. He would start working and help his friend's illegal business. There was no other choice. Wuchiol would work with his friend, Du-shik. He started training his boxing again, and he will be placed as a supervisor at the bar. Days later, Du-shik met Detective Jong-gun. Du-shik wanted Jong-gun to forgive his friend, Wuchiol. The reason Wuchiol beat Jong-gun was just a misunderstanding. Du-shik said that Wuchiol would help his business. Detective Jong-gun wanted to forgive Wuchiol, but he would teach him a little lesson first. That night, Wuchiol was forced to go to the bar. He would be reunited with Jong-gun and had to apologize to him. Jong-gun beat Wuchiol inside. This arrogant officer felt very strong and couldn't be toyed with. In fact, Wu Qiu almost couldn't control his emotions and wanted to finish this man. Wu Qiu promised that one day he would finish off this bastard. After that, Du Shik brought Wu Qiu to meet Ri Gak-su. Apparently, Gak-su was a citizen of North Korea who often moved to the south. All of his drug production is made in the north. Du Shik then introduced Wu Qiu to Gak-su. At that time, Gak-su said that his production house in North Korea was raided. Therefore, they couldn't start production until the end of summer. However, they currently have 40 kilograms in stock. However, Du Shik was hesitant because he didn't have enough money to buy that much drugs. But Gak-su didn't mind that. He just asked for the transaction amount as usual. After talking about business, Wu Qiu smoked outside while looking at the rain. Gak-su went out and talked to Song Wu Qiu. Gak-su was interested in Wu Qiu. Moreover, after getting to know each other, Gak-su found out that Wu Qiu's surname is the same as his mother's. Because Wu Qiu already worked with Du Shik, Wu Qiu moved into an apartment. He would live with Han Tae. They also wore nice clothes with fancy suits. Tonight, they will start working at the bar. Madame Han introduced all the girls to Wu Qiu, and Bayam was there too. Starting today, Wu Qiu would be the supervisor in this bar. Kang Yoon-jae, the manager, also explained Wu Qiu's duties. Han Tae was even interested in one of the girls. Madame Han wanted all the workers to report to Wu Qiu. If there is a problem with a guest and there is a commotion, they should report it immediately. Finally, that day, Wu Qiu started working as a supervisor at the bar with lots of problems, from drunk customers and also customers who made a mess. Wu Qiu also tried to help Bayam, who was drunk and vomiting, but for some reason, this girl was very cold to him. Of course, Wu Qiu felt his heart hurt seeing Bayam working as a hostess in this place. Meanwhile, Han Tae also has a scandal with one of the entertainer girls named Hai Ri. That day, Du Shik came to see Zhang Gan. This corrupt officer's job was only to get drunk and use drugs, even during the day when he was working. Du Shik actually wanted to get rid of Gak-su and took all the drugs. He just needed to take advantage of an addict officer like Zhang Gan, and he would also take advantage of his friend, Wu Qiu. The situation would be like a gangster war fighting with defectors from the north over drugs. Zhang Gan would then shoot Gak-su. It would look like a normal arrest, and the drugs would be secured by Du Shik, so it would be perfect. Not only that, Du Shik also promised he will send Zhang Gan to Thailand. He will be able to use drugs every day and have fun with women. Then Du Shik got out of the car. But actually, Zhang Gan also didn't trust Du Shik. He was also afraid that he would be betrayed by Du Shik. That day, the club was very chaotic. Han Tae was beaten up by Kang Yoon-jae, the manager. Han Tae was caught making out with a girl. He was beaten up, and finally, Wu Qiu came to stop this commotion. Han Tae confessed that he loved Hai Ri, but Wu Qiu asked him to stop. Manager Kang asked Wu Qiu to be stricter with the girls, otherwise they could act as they pleased. That night, several people came to the club. They were members of Ri Gak-su's gang. Madame Han asked Wu Qiu, as the supervisor, to just keep quiet and not do anything if these people were rioting, making trouble, forcing the girls to even harass them. Bayam, who was in the same room with the gangsters, was also forced to accompany them. At that time, Wu Qiu accidentally saw it. Bayam was angry at being forced, so she called these people from the North rebel and did whatever they wanted in the South. Because of that, they were angry and slapped Bayam. Wu Qiu couldn't stand it any longer and was angry. These people were shouting, calling manager Kang Yoon-jae. After that, Yoon-jae came inside and apologized for this misunderstanding. Kang Yoon-jae asked Wu Qiu to stop, but Wu Qiu couldn't hold his anger anymore. In the end, Kang Yoon-jae was beaten up. Wu Qiu's emotions had been suppressed for a long time. Here, Bayam saw the other side of Wu Qiu. Things were in chaos, and these gangsters were arrested and taken by the police. Zhang Gan protested why didn't Madame Han call him first, and when Wu Qiu was going to be taken, Zhang Gan stopped him. He would take care of Wu Qiu. Zhang Gan advised Wu Qiu not to disadvantage the business. Zhang Gan asked Wu Qiu not to involve feelings, and when Wu Qiu was about to leave, someone approached him and stabbed him. Wu Chiol could still hold the person back and beat him. Zhang Gan came to beat the man and asked who he was. It turned out this young man was Jia Wan's younger brother who wanted revenge. This young man was the teenager Wu Chiol saw in prison. This boy was named Zhengdu, and he was taken to the police station. Luckily, Wu Chiol didn't press charges, so Zhengdu was allowed to leave. Zhengdu accidentally met Byam, who had just finished giving testimony. Zhengdu then called Byam's real name Myungju. She was Zhengdu's brother's ex-girlfriend. They sat and chatted together. Zhengdu said he met the bastard who killed his brother. That person was the one who destroyed their lives. However, Byam felt it was an accident, but Zhengdu didn't accept it and told Byam to apologize. Zhengdu said that his brother had asked their mother for 5 million won. Zhengdu knew the money was given to Byam. Now Zhengdu wanted Byam to return the money. On the other hand, Wu Chiol was at home and checking his scar. That's when he got a message from Byam. The girl asked him to meet at the beach. Shortly, they met and talked about many things. Byam asked Wu Chiol to buy beer and snacks. It turned out last night, when Byam was interrogated, Zhang Gan wanted Byam to approach Wu Chiol, who likes her. Zhang Gan asked Byam to install an eavesdropping application on his cell phone. If she succeeds, Zhang Gan promised to stop bothering Byam. Zhang Gan said that Wu Chiol was the one who killed Byam's boyfriend in the boxing ring. Zhang Gan even gave the girl a gift of drugs. Then, when Wu Chiol left, Byam installed an eavesdropping application. After that, Wu Chiol came with beer and some food. They also took selfies together. At the same time, Kang Yoon-jae protested to his boss, Du Shik. He was very embarrassed about being beaten by Wu Chiol, and he could no longer work at the bar. Du Shik calmed him down. They needed Wu Chiol for their big plan. After getting the drugs from Jae Suk and selling it, Du Shik would go to Seoul. He would do his business there. He would also bring Yoon-ja with him. After meeting Byam, Wu Chiol went home to his apartment, and it turned out Hyun Tae had brought his girlfriend there. Hyun Tae confided in Wu Chiol that his girlfriend, Hai Ri, had a debt with Madam Han 20 million won. He wanted Wu Chiol to take him because he knew that Du Shik had a drug business. He wanted to get money to pay his girlfriend's debt. After that, they came to Gaksu's headquarters. Wu Chiol invited Hyun Tae to this meeting, and Du Shik was angry. He asked Hyun Tae to leave because Hyun Tae wasn't allowed here. However, Gaksu allowed him to stay. Wu Chiol's friend was also his guest. Gaksu's subordinate who was beaten up was angry when he saw Wu Chiol, and Wu Chiol immediately apologized. Du Shik immediately said the point. He would buy all of Gaksu's drugs. Du Shik asked for the transaction time because he needed time to prepare the money. Gaksu was annoyed and asked him to be patient because the goods haven't arrived yet. He has to be clever at observing the situation in this business. Sometime later, Gaksu invited Wu Chiol to talk alone. He knew that Wu Chiol is Du Shik's friend, but for some reason, he felt that he could trust Wu Chiol, who he just met. Gaksu asked if Wu Chiol thinks Du Shik is someone he can do business with. Then Wu Chiol answered that his friend can be trusted. However, Gaksu said if Wu Chiol was naive, because according to him, people can change at any time, even if it's his best friend. Gaksu even offered Wu Chiol to work with him instead. Hearing that, Wu Chiol was just silent. In the car, Wu Chiol talked about his conversation with Gaksu. Du Shik felt that Gaksu likes Wu Chiol. Du Shik wanted Wu Chiol to use Gaksu to get rid of Detective Zhang Gan. Wu Chiol had to persuade Gaksu not to work with the addict as an intermediary anymore. Detective Zhang Gan heard all this. He didn't think that Du Shik wanted to get rid of him. Zhang Gan called Du Shik and said if there's a change in plans. They can't do business in the near future. Du Shik was annoyed because actually he wanted Zhang Gan to raid Gaksu's gang as soon as possible so they could seize the drugs. Du Shik was upset because Zhang Gan was delaying the plans. Living in a criminal situation wasn't easy. These people betrayed each other. After that, Zhang Gan met Gaksu. He reminded Gaksu to be wary of Wu Chiol and Du Shik. He also reminded Gaksu not to get too close to Wu Chiol. But as a veteran criminal, Gaksu was definitely careful. He would be alert and remember John Gon's words. However, Gak-su actually didn't trust this corrupt officer. It turned out that John Gon, the cunning officer, still had a backup plan. He would break Du-shik and Wu-cheol's friendship. Later, John Gon met Wu-cheol in the parking lot and asked him to talk. John Gon revealed a big secret about Jiao Wan's death. This is why Jiao Wan had a headache when he boxed several years ago. Du-shik paid Jiao Wan's trainer to put an anesthetic on his drink so that Jiao Wan drank it in the second round. Therefore, Du-shik was a cunning person. He just wanted to get a lot of money. He even took advantage of Wu-cheol, his own friend. In fact, Jiao Wan's killer was Du-shik, not Wu-cheol. Here, Wu-cheol was betrayed by his friend and sentenced to prison for 8 years because he was framed by his own friend. Knowing this fact, Wu-cheol was very hurt. Meanwhile, Byam was forced to borrow 5 million won from Madame Han. Wu-cheol tried to stop Byam, thinking she would use the money to buy drugs. However, Byam said that this was none of Wu-cheol's business. After that, Byam gave the money to her ex-boyfriend's little brother. Wu-cheol looked for Byam, and finally he found her. Byam was sitting alone and Wu-cheol called her by her real name. Byam was angry because she didn't want to be called with that name again. Now her name is Byam. This girl was very stressed about her life and wondered why is everyone making her life difficult. Wu-cheol then screamed and said what was in his heart. He likes Byam and is worried about her. Then Byam asked Wu-cheol to hand over his cell phone. She said that she wanted to delete her photo, but it turned out that Byam deleted the eavesdropping application. After that, Byam left. That same night, Wu-cheol met Du-shik. He wanted to postpone their plan to deceive the gangster boss, Gak-su, because Wu-cheol wasn't ready yet. He didn't want to go to prison again, and he didn't want to take the risk. Du-shik felt that Wu-cheol was acting like a stranger. Du-shik said he had helped Wu-cheol when he had a problem with John Gon. However, Wu-cheol didn't care. He didn't trust his friend anymore. Before leaving, Wu-cheol told Du-shik to teach Henjia some manners. Hearing that, Du-shik was very upset and angry. Du-shik felt that Wu-cheol had changed because of Byam. Because of that, Du-shik called Byam to see him. He intended to harass this woman, took out his hurt on Wu-cheol. Du-shik mocked Byam by saying how his friend, Wu-cheol, fell in love with her. So Du-shik will check on her. At this time, Madame Han stopped Du-shik, making him even more annoyed. He took out his annoyance on Madame Han. Du-shik didn't let Byam leave, so Byam cried seeing this sad sight. Madame Han is like a very good sister to Byam. After that incident, Du-shik called Hyuntae because he was close to Wu-cheol and lived in the same house as him. From now on, Hyuntae had to report all Wu-cheol's activities to Du-shik, like wherever he goes. Meanwhile, Detective John Gon wanted to tap Wu-cheol's cell phone again. He really wanted to know what these people's plans were. But the cell phone can't be connected. So he realizes that Byam betrayed him. He is very upset and angry. In his office, Detective John Gon saw Jung-do being arrested by his colleague. This young man took out a knife when he lost at gambling. After that, Detective John Gon asked his friend to leave and he would take care of Jung-do. He had a plan and would use this young man. Detective John Gon told Jung-do that Byam is dating Wu-cheol, whereas Wu-cheol has killed his brother in the boxing ring. Jung-do was very angry to hear this. On the other hand, at her house, Byam was surprised that someone knocked on the door. It turned out it was Jung-do. He immediately attacked Byam. He strangled her. Byam, who was cornered, took a knife. In self-defense, she had taken the life of this young man. Byam immediately called Wu-cheol, who immediately rushed there. Wu-cheol arrived, and he was shocked when he saw Jung-do dead covered in blood. Wu-cheol calms Byam down and takes the knife, saying that he would take care of this. Wu-cheol knows he can no longer trust Du-shik, so he calls Gak-su to get rid of this body. So, that night, they drowned Jung-do's body in the sea. Wu-cheol was shocked because Gak-su brought Detective John Gon. Wu-cheol is seasick. Then Gak-su calms Wu-cheol down and said they still needed help from John Gon. Otherwise, everything would be revealed and he would be arrested. Gak-su advised Wuchil if he had the intention to save someone, he must do it to the end. After that, Wuchil met Byam. He said that he had already taken care of the matter. Wuchil asked Byam to come to work and act as usual. After that, Wuchil was about to leave, but Byam stopped him and asked him to accompany her tonight. The next day, Detective John Gon invited Wuchil to talk in his interrogation room because this was the safest place. Wuchil wanted to get straight to the point. John Gon also said that he didn't trust Du-shik anymore, and he also didn't trust Gak-su. While he was only protecting Byam from the murder case, because he had no choice. On May 2nd, the day of the transaction, Wuchil has to go to Gak-su's headquarters and finish him off and then take his money. If Wuchil succeeds, he and Byam will be freed forever. Here, Wuchil was forced to accept John Gon's request. Meanwhile, Du-shik, who was annoyed with Wuchil, challenged him in the boxing ring and beat Wuchil. Because Wuchil was annoyed too, he returned his friend's fist and beat him. Du-shik was not Wuchil's opponent. Their friendship had broken down. Wuchil then said he knew about Du-shik's actions in the past, and from now on, Wuchil didn't owe Du-shik anything anymore, and Wuchil left from there. That day, Du-shik was very upset. Then, Wuchil met and talked to Hyun-tae. Wuchil trusted Hyun-tae, but he didn't know that Hyun-tae had already been paid to spy on his movements. There's no partner in crime, there's no trust in the criminal world. The scene showing Du-shik and John Gon, the two cunning people who were sitting in the car. Meanwhile, Wuchil was in the backseat of the car. They were discussing their plans for May 2nd, because they would work together to trick and kill Gak-su. After that, Wuchil immediately met Gak-su. He told him Du-shik's plan, who wanted to get rid of him when they got the drugs. Wuchil wanted Gak-su to attack Du-shik first, and Wuchil asked for something. He asked Gak-su to smuggle him to Thailand or Vietnam after all of this. He wanted to live alone with his girlfriend Byam. Wuchil also asked for cash money to live there. Hearing that, Gak-su agreed, but he wanted that after Wuchil's girlfriend was safe, she had to go back to Korea and work for him. Unfortunately, all the conversations were tapped by Du-shik. It turned out this guy also installed a device on Wuchil's cell phone. He gave instructions to Yoon-ja and asked John Gon and his troops to prepare at the crime scene. Du-shik then met with Wuchil, asking him to find out where Gak-su anchored his ship from the north. John Gon also asked Wuchil to take the transaction money. These two people asked Wuchil for something. So here, Wuchil risked his own life. Wuchil promised Byam that he would come back. Finally, the long-awaited day had arrived and Wuchil was ready to do his job. He asked Hyun-tae to wait for him at the appointed place, and if Wuchil didn't return by 4 a.m., Hyun-tae had to leave immediately. He shouldn't receive a call, even if it was from Wuchil himself. Here, Wuchil apologizes for involving Hyun-tae. Meanwhile, Byam was taken by the police because she will be John Gon's guarantee until Wuchil hands over the money. That night, Du-shik took Wuchil, then Wuchil got out of the car with the money and left with another car. Du-shik was very sure that Wuchil, the wild boxer, would succeed. Meanwhile, John Gon was also waiting and still had time to use the drug. Later, Wuchil got out of the car. Gak-su and his men came on a boat to deliver the drug. Then Wuchil threw the money, but suddenly, Gak-su's men attacked him. Gak-su also attacked Wuchil, and Du-shik saw all of this from afar. That night, Gak-su was killed with his own knife, and of course, Du-shik was very happy, thinking that Wuchil was following all his orders. He called Wuchil and told him to go somewhere. Yoon-jae reported to his boss that they had prepared everything. Then Wuchil went to the place where Detective John Gon was waiting, then handed over the money. Of course, John Gon was very happy and asked for the money immediately. However, Wuchil refused. So John Gon asked his colleague to let go of Byam, and after that, Hyun-tae picked up Byam. After that, Wuchil handed over the money. But after the money was handed over, John Gon shot Wuchil. Apparently, John Gon betrayed Wuchil. Not only that, John Gon tortured Wuchil, arrogantly saying that Wuchil must be very vengeful and wanting to finish him off. His job was finished, and Zhonggan played with the gun in his own mouth. However, Wu Qiol was still able to move, grabbed the gun, and shot Zhonggan. In the end, this bad guy died. On the other hand, Hyun Tae and Byam waited for Wu Qiol somewhere, and Wu Qiol came with an injured leg. However, Byam wasn't there. Hyun Tae said that Byam had been dropped off in a safe place. But suddenly, from behind the trunk of the car, Wu Qiol heard a voice, so he wanted to check it. But Hyun Tae suddenly attacked Wu Qiol. Hyun Tae apologized because he was forced to do it because his girlfriend was detained by Du Shik. So Hyun Tae was forced to betray Wu Qiol because he didn't want his girlfriend to be killed by Du Shik. Actually, Wu Qiol wanted to finish off Hyun Tae, but seeing him crying and begging him, Wu Qiol couldn't bear it. Wu Qiol forgave him and thought maybe this was retribution for his past sins. He was willing to die at Hyun Tae's hands, but he wanted Hyun Tae to promise not to kill Byam because she was innocent. The knife stuck deeper and deeper on Wu Qiol. Finally, Wu Qiol collapsed. He remembered everything, all of his memories with Byam. He was grateful that a bad guy like him could still feel love. After that, Hyun Tae left Wu Qiol, and in the middle of the road, Hyun Tae freed Byam. This girl immediately ran to the place and saw that her lover had died. Byam howled and cried sadly. Meanwhile, Du Shik is waiting for news from Detective Zhonggan. He was wondering whether Zhonggan had killed Wu Qiol, but there was no answer. Suddenly, Gak-su and his men attacked Du Shik's headquarters. Du Shik was surprised that Gak-su was still alive. What happened was that Wu Qiol showed Gak-su that their conversation had been tapped by Du Shik. Because of that, Gak-su and Wu Qiol devised another strategy. Gak-su and his men pretending to have been killed by Wu Qiol. He even wore a protector on his stomach. Gak-su was sure that Du Shik was observing from a distance. Gak-su and his men attacked all of Du Shik's men. Du Shik left Yoon-jae, who was exhausted, and he betrayed Yoon-jae. Gak-su said that the dog would not hurt its master, but it was his master who would leave him. Gak-su wanted to know what happened to Wu Qiol, and Yoon-jae told him everything. A week after the incident, Yoon-jae was still alive and was freed by Gak-su. He met Du Shik and said he managed to get the money and the drugs. Du Shik asked what happened to Hyun Tae, and Yoon-jae said that he managed to survive and accidentally found Hyun Tae and then finished him off. Turns out the money and the drugs were in his car. They intended to go to Seoul and walked away. But suddenly, Yoon-jae killed his own boss. Yoon-jae was left alive to finish off Du Shik. Then, Du Shik fell to death and lost blood. All of Du Shik's business were taken by Gak-su, and Yoon-jae's position was safe as the manager. Gak-su felt that all this was because of Wu Qiol. Everyone should thank him. The scene showing Byam was cooking at home. She looked happy, and suddenly, Wu Qiol came. Byam greeted him happily, and it was the happy ending that Byam wanted. But it was all just her hallucination. It was all just Byam's fantasy because she was addicted to drugs, and the film ended.